You got to set up a system that delivers extraordinary service. This is all built around campaigns and action plans, whatever your contact management system might call that, basically setting up a series of events that happen automatically. We basically took what most agents have as a checklist in their file, and I electronified it, put dates and times on it, and when you hit the start button, you can't turn it off. I automated our entire business.
Hello, Patrick Lilly here, and welcome to Real Estate Success Rocks podcast, where we help you answer the question, what does success mean to you? And before we get started, instead of using advertising to support this podcast, we're using patronage. So if you want to become a patron of the podcast, go to realestatesuccess.rocks. You'll find a link to become a patron. And if you want to listen to it for free, by all means do. We want as many listeners as possible, and we want you guys to feel good about it. So we're here with my friend, Brad Korn. Hey, Brad.
Hey, Patrick, how are you?
It's good to see you. Good to see you. It's good to hear you. It's early in the morning, and Brad's out in Kansas City. Brad represents the greater Kansas City area. He's been in business for 25 years. He did 82 units in 2015. And you've opened up a second team in Lincoln, Nebraska. What's that all about?
That started probably about 9 years ago. We were just talking about team expansion and some of that stuff, but that was already my plan from the beginning, was to have teams around the country, because I ran my whole team on a system and it was setting up great systems. So I thought, I can just open up teams wherever I want to go travel and go on vacation. Well, so don't think for a second, Patrick, that I thought Lincoln, Nebraska was my destination for vacation haven.
How did you pick Lincoln, Nebraska?
Well, so I'm a little slower than most people. I'm in the Midwest, We have some friends that went from Vail to Naples. Brad Korn goes from Kansas City to Lincoln, Nebraska. I'll be honest with you. The truth is my brother lives there. He had inquired about real estate, and I said, I want to check out this model for franchising a team, not a company. So it was perfect. We actually started his real estate business with $0 out of pocket. My project was to see if we could start a successful real estate business with no money invested. And that was starting with relationships, building up the database for 6 months. That's all he did was meet people and write notes. And we funded the signs. Then we ran a few more sales through and funded our advertising. We basically built a brand and a logo in less than a year. And he was able to quit his job in 1 year. And really, we started with nothing except relationship.
All right. So at our last conference, Brad had the second highest rated content session in Seattle, and it was on database automation, and people just loved it. So I wanted to bring it to you to expand upon it and go into a little bit more detail. So when you say database automation, what does that mean to you, Brad?
Well, I'll tell you where it all started from, Patrick. I mean, first of all, one of the things I was smart enough to do when I first got into real estate is I started hanging around people like you and everybody that was at, Seattle. I mean, you guys became my friends. And I knew that if I was going to make it in real estate, I might as well see what the successful people are doing. And I literally would just walk up to stage after you guys were talking. When I first got in 25 years ago, I just would go up and introduce myself to you guys, and then I'd stay in touch. And I just became friends with everybody. I remember in one of our groups where we were all with Howard Brinton in this group, I remember in 2007, I finally got interviewed by Howard, and I think he ran out of people. That's why I got
No, yeah, and it's true because that's the same year he interviewed me. So it is true. He had run out of people.
Oh, see, now I thought you got interviewed way before that.
No, I was just a couple of months before you. That's all.
Well, what was so funny is when he called me, I'm like, what'd you do, run out of people? But it's like when the interview came out, they're like, wow, he doesn't interview people a second time. And I was like, you guys, I've been your friends for the last 6-7 years. I've just been hanging out with you because they said you're the average of the 6 people you hang around. So that's who I hung around. But to get back to it, I tell you, that's a core piece of it. And then another major core piece of it was Michael Gerber's book, E-Myth Revisited. I mean, this is definitely a book everybody should pull back off their shelves, because I'll tell you the gist of it. And when I say automation, this will all make sense. In Michael Gerber's E-Myth Revisited, he talked about delivering extraordinary service. And in all the years of coaching top agents who are building teams, what I found is that when we hire people, no matter what classes you go to master the hiring process, to hire awesome people that are going to help your business grow, there's an 80-20 rule out there that none of us can get away from. It's like gravity. And that means 80% of the people you hire are going to be average people, and only 20% are going to be good, and only 3% are going to be incredible employees. So what I came up with, and what I came, or not what I came up with, but the message I got from the book E-Myth Revisited was, you got to set up a system that delivers extraordinary service. In fact, Howard Brinton is one that connected the dots for me, because one day, I was telling him about an issue I had with an employee, and he said, Brad, that's not the employee's problem. That's your system's problem. And I went right back to that book, and I said, I have to build in incredible customer service. So from that point forward, this is all built around campaigns and action plans, whatever your contact management system might call that, basically setting up a series of events that happen automatically. And I automated our entire business, from when we capture a lead, the follow-up that happens, and adding the personal touch back in, and it's all automated, clear down to the back end where it's from contract to close, from a new listing until it goes under contract, from a new buyer until we write a contract. We basically took what most agents have as a checklist, if they have one, a checklist in their file, and I electronified it, put dates and times on it, and when you hit the start button, you can't turn it off.
Okay, so let's stop for a second. So automation there for you means is that once somebody is sent into what we would call a workflow, once somebody is entered into a workflow, then everything is automated, either with emails going out or notifications that you need to call them or send them a note or something along that line. Is that accurate?
Even more so than that. It actually, down to the to-do task of assigned to each person on my team. So the accountability is even built into the system.
Okay, so let's get back to accountability in a minute. Let's take this one step at a time. So we start with, I would imagine the hard thing here is actually setting up the automation. That's where the real time is spent, is setting up the automation. And it's going to take more time at the beginning, but once you get it set up, it's going to save you a lot of time and help you to be consistent and systematic.
Oh my gosh, you nailed it, Patrick. It's the only time investment that takes a while, is setting up the first system.
Okay, so let's talk about that. First of all, are you using a CRM to do your database automation?
Using a CRM, yes.
And which one do you personally use?
There's things I don't like about my past 8 contact management systems. So that's not really the key answer. The question I think you're asking me is, what would I use? I'd use the one that allows me to totally custom create a series of events. And this is key. It has to let me do every form of medium that I can possibly do. Meaning, can I print a printer directly to my local printer in the printer behind my desk? Can I send it to a mail house? Can I send emails automatically? And more importantly, does it have a dashboard or like a main place where that pops up? All my calls for the day, all of my to-dos for the day, emails go out automatically, but we print some letters in-house for the day that we can make notes on. So it's totally customized that I can set it up however I want, make whatever I want happen on whatever day I want. And it lets me do everything, not an all email drip, not an all postcard thing. I can totally custom create the action plans and campaigns that are in there.
So it's customizable.
Totally customized.
So it's going to, instead of saying Dear Sir, it's going to Dear Joe.
Exactly.
And you can even put within the content of the message, if it's an email or a letter, you can put in the content of the message where their name is actually in the content, not just in the address line.
Yes. However, with that being said, I want everybody to make a note here. Be careful about too much automation in your follow-up process. So we have built-in actual fingers touching things and looking at stuff because every time I fully automate something and it's out of sight, out of mind, it's going to people who are divorced, or like I just caught one the other day. I'm in my database every day and somehow our pastor who passed away, stuff was going out with both their names on it. So,
Oy, oy. So this is interesting. So did you originally set up all of these steps yourself for your business, Brad?
yeah, man, you ask great questions. It's like you went into my head before this podcast started and I say that because 10 years of helping agents with this, and now I set up some of these systems for people. There's key things that I figured out, and that is one of them.
So Brad, you went in and you created this yourself. And the reason behind that is what?
Yeah. So what I figured out is that I have systems for everything. I have hundreds and hundreds of action plans for different things. And what I figured out from a lot of agents, they're like, well, just give me your plan. We've been getting other people's stuff our whole career, Patrick. And if you don't do it and you don't own it, it's not going to happen because there's not buy-in on it.
Boy, that's a really good point. There's not the buy-in unless you put the sweat into it, is it?
No, there's not.
And it's not going to mean as much either.
No, I've got the secret to get complete team buy-in on every system that you do and shows them how to make it possible. And I'll walk through it right here to tell you how and why I custom created my own process.
Let's do that.
Basically, what I did was I wrote down everything that I thought was happening in a transaction. I also had my team at that time writing down what they did every day. So I had my buyer's agent tracking for 2 weeks. Just write down everything that you do so that I have a detailed list of what you do. Now, I also know when you're managing a team, you got to be careful here because they may think that you're getting ready to fire them. So I came up with a great script because I really wanted to know every detail so I could automate the whole process and deliver extraordinary service every time, whether they were having an average day or an extraordinary day, you know? So what I did is have them track everything they did for 2 weeks. And I basically said this, Patrick, and this is what I've coached people on forever, is have your team write this down. Now, here's the script to get it. Say, let's just say we hit our goal this year, and I'm going to take you and your entire family on a 10, 14-day cruise. The whole team's going together. We're going to leave, and we're going to pay you while we're on vacation because we're going to hire a temp agency to run our real estate business while we're gone. So what I need you to do is document this so detailed that I can have a temp walk in who knows nothing about our job, just process it while we're all on this cruise. Now, I didn't say I was taking anybody on a cruise. I'm just saying if we did this, that's the kind of list I want. And it works every time. Now, it might take them a week to finally get them doing it. But if you track it over a couple of weeks, here's a couple of things I figured out. I wrote down what I thought everybody was doing. Everybody wrote down what they were doing. And then if you can visualize this, I know we're on a podcast.
Well, here, can you send a visual to us that we can put into show notes?
I have this whole process. I got pictures of this process of going through. So you're going to see a picture of our notes, what that looks like. Then I take those sheets and I cross off everything that I wrote on my list that matches their list. The things that are left on my list are my frustrations with my team members because they're things I thought were getting done, but they don't even know they should be doing them. So that's one thing.
Wow. So first of all, it's a way of actually following through to see that people are doing what you want to do by even just creating this list for automation.
Yeah. See, people love doing business with you because of your extraordinary level of service that you put into something. And when you own something and you hire somebody to help you, you're not going to typically find the same level. So that's
right.
Just it's documenting your expectations and creating a written visual of what makes you so awesome.
That's great. I love that.
So then I take those action items and I put them, each action item, this is going to sound crazy, but listen to me. I've done it with several people, dozens. Put each action item on a sticky note, on its own sticky note. And then I get the team together in a conference room for the day, and we order in lunch. I might even bring a massage person in because it's a 4 to 6 hour session. We take, okay, let's look at our listing to contract process. And I take all the sticky notes that have anything to do with from the time we list a house until it goes under contract. The whole team's in the room. We just start putting all those action items up on the wall in the order that they would happen. Now, here's the best part, Patrick. What we do on each sticky note, the whole team talks about, okay, so lead comes in, we grab a yellow sheet. That's our intake form. Once that's done, we put them in the database. Then we start the follow-up plan. Then we do this and that. The booklets have to be in the property within 5 days. So we go through each sticky note on the wall as a team, and we go, who's responsible for this piece? And the whole team contributes. Well, I do that sometimes, and I do it most of the time. So both their names go on the sticky note. The other thing that we put with it is there a time frame associated with this particular action item? So like what I figured out the first time I did this is I was getting so mad because our property brochures were not in the property a week after I listed the house. I was telling the seller at the listing appointment, we're going to have these awesome brochures in your house within 3 days. Well, at the office, the person that was doing the brochures is so slam busy. They're like, Brad, we can't do those in 3 days all the time. That's too much. And I said, and that's where we got to have a discussion on this one sticky note. And I said, well, how long do you need? And they said 7 days. And I was like, we can't do 7 days. We're going to have to compromise here. What can we do? They said, well, I mean, if I could do it in 5. I said, great. Now I went back to my appointments from that day forward and always said, you will have these brochures within 5 days. But there's the ownership piece is that we all took ownership. We all were a part of it. And there was complete buy-in versus me just coming in going, I want these booklets in the house in 3 days, because that didn't work. Makes sense?
It makes perfect sense.
So we go through this whole process. So you're going to see this podcast when you access the extra material. You're going to see how our notes look, what the sticky note process looked like. And then this is the best part, Patrick. You're going to be blown away. I've never even shared this stuff with you. I take each of those action items in the order that they're in, and I put them into a spreadsheet. So if you can imagine, column number 1 is just our system for new listing to contract plan. And I put each step in its own line. Column 1 is the action item. Column 2 is there a time frame associated with it, a time limit or timer that goes off, whatever, within 1 day, within 3 days. And then I have a column for every member on my team. And whatever names we put on the sticky note, we just put X's in the column that go with that action item. The coolest part when this is done, 2 things. 1, I have an instant visual job description for everybody on my team, the most important job description of all. In fact, this is basically my whole policy and procedures manual is one spreadsheet. The second thing that happens, and this is just things I've figured out along the years, is that if 2 or 3 people left on my team, let's just say at one point I had 8 or 9 people on my team. If 2 buyer's agents left or they didn't work out, we would just go through their columns and pull their X's off of their column and put it in whoever was going to take over that part of the job. If I had an admin person, a key admin person leave my team, all I have to do is have a team meeting with everybody else and go, all right, here's the admin column. Who's taking on this action item? Who's taking on this action item? And I can go right into my electronic system, change the name, and everybody's reassigned their jobs, and it's instant job description redone.
Yeah, there's so many incredible benefits here. There is one, you're going to provide better service to your clients because you're not going to forget what you're supposed to be doing. Number 2, you're able to replace people easily when there's illness, when people leave the team for whatever reason. Number 3, you have a way of holding people accountable since everything is detailed now. And 4, it makes your life easier even though it takes time up front.
Bingo. That's why actually 2015, we actually worked the entire year with 2 people running my team because I was basically out for 6 months. And I mean, I'm still the listing guy. So 2 people ran 80 transactions smoothly.
That's awesome. And thank God you did that because you really had a tough year this year, Brad. Thank God personally. Thank God you did that because that enabled you to continue having income to come in at a time when you needed it.
Well, so I'll just make a comment there for anybody who's listening that didn't know. My wife was in an accident on March 13th in a head-on collision. She recovered by the first week of June. By the third week of June, she just didn't wake up one day and was in a coma. And they lost her on the way to the hospital when she wouldn't wake up. That lack of oxygen put her into a coma for 6 months. And we lost her on November 4th. We couldn't get her back out of that anoxic brain injury. So I took her all over the country, guys. And this is the thing. This is the message from this plan right here that's so important, because I always push myself way out of my comfort level to hang around people like you, Patrick, and everybody else, and push myself to be successful like you guys. Because I was always way above comfortable and always stretching myself. When this happened, honestly, I fell back to a comfortable level. Like, I didn't have to worry about whether my house payment was going to be made or my car payments. And I worry about that all the time because most people get stuck at comfortable. And then when something really bad happens, it sucks them down to uncomfortable. And the last thing I could even imagine dealing with while I was in Lincoln, Nebraska for several months trying to get my wife awake is worrying about whether or not my house payment was being made and my car payment. That would have made this the most horrendous thing ever. I mean, it already was. So that's why I'm sharing this message. And really, when I came to Seattle, it was like, guys, you got to get uncomfortable. You got to get these systems documented, and you got to get it like extraordinary level service automated so that that is delivered every single time. And you can never have to worry about whether you're going to be comfortable or uncomfortable.
Well, you talk about blowing me away. That blew me away. I knew all of those facts, and I'm really moved by how when somebody's real and shares what's really going on with them and how they combine that with the work they've put into their lives, how it can make a difference in their own life and make a difference in other people's lives. So really, Brad, thanks, really. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I appreciate you having a way for us to share it with even more, because I just, the thought of anybody having to do that, just, that worries me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, this is a bit of a plug here, but, one of the reasons you go to conferences like our conference and other conferences is to hang out with people who are doing stuff that are making changes in their lives, that are pushing their lives in the directions they want to go in.
And here's the thing. I mean, in real estate, you and I have seen it forever. I mean, there are so many markets where you could sell 20 homes a year and make so much money and have a really good life. Because here's what I challenge people on. How much time does it take to close 2 houses a month? I mean, really, you know?
True.
So when you automate the system, it's like this has led to our instant listing program. I can list a house in 1 hour and be done. It's all done. So it's automated it. It's actually freed up our time to do way more business. And this is probably the best part, is that my team is blessed because I've provided them an opportunity where they don't have to settle for a status quo job, that they can go accomplish even more. So that's what I love about it.
It's a win-win-win scenario for the clients, for the team, for you. It's a win-win. Now, I know people, something I do know, is that there will be some people listening to this that'll be moved by your story, but not moved enough to do this.
Yeah.
Because the reason is that this is not where their strengths are. And people often don't like to do where their strengths are. So Brad already talked about pushing yourself outside your box. For those of you that are not willing to push yourself outside of your box on this issue, then hire somebody to help you set this up for you. Now, I would love your advice on this, Brad, but I would think when you hire somebody, you still have to have some flesh in the game or it's not going to be as effective.
Yeah. So basically what you want to do is build a 20-lane highway of your business, whether you're in one agent by yourself right now. I mean, this is like the most exciting thing for me to talk about. Because one agent by yourself right now, if you create the system that I created, or document, not my system, but you document your system, just like we talked about, and you create this automated process that delivers incredible service every time. I'm telling you, what you've done is you built a 20-lane highway that never goes under construction. Most people build a 2-lane highway. They get into real estate, see how much business they can handle. They get really super busy doing one deal a month or two deals a month. And they're like, oh, last thing I would ever want to do is hire a big old team. And then they put their business under construction. Some of them do, and they push themselves a little bit and they go to 4 lanes. Then they put their business back under construction the next year because they went to a great conference, and then they add 2 more lanes, and they're always under construction, and it just hurts. If you take your entire system and document it like we talked about, you're creating a 20-lane highway. You can always add pieces later, extra service and extra touches, but if you document every little thing, I'm telling you, what it did for me was when I was struggling to do 24 deals. I remember telling Sonia when I first met her, man, if I could just close 2 deals a month, I could pay off the bills, right? Remember those days, Patrick?
Yes, I do.
Oh my gosh. And now we have to close 10 a month to pay the bills. But it's not a stressful 10. It's easier for me to close 10 deals a month than it did when I was closing 2 deals a month.
Yeah, and I'm gonna make the analogy to keeping a clean home. You know, when I have everything in place and I'm working on something and I know where everything is and I can find it, it just makes my life easier than when I can't find anything. And the peace of mind it brings to having your house in order is really what database automation does.
It does. Yeah. It is so awesome because here's the thing. I don't have to think about who I haven't talked to yet or that, wake up in the middle of the night going, oh my gosh, I haven't talked to those clients in 30 days because you were super slammed one week and, everything was going good. You were looking behind the scenes. They were getting good showings, all that stuff, but you really physically did not talk to them for 30 days and you wake up with this cold sweat and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't follow up with so-and-so.
Yeah.
I don't have to think about that. I just plug it into the system and I get to live in the moment. And that's what allowed me to do what I did. I mean, I was in Lincoln, Nebraska, hanging out in the hospital. I only slept in my bed 7 nights since June of last year until November. So, but everything was under control. All the systems were following up. And here's the best part, Patrick. I mean, I'll pull it back to the front end because I know everybody's getting excited about the back end transaction management stuff. That is what everybody wants. You don't even need to automate that until you automate how you're capturing every person you communicate with on a daily basis and then follow up with them until they buy or sell. Because one of the things I talked about at the conference, if you meet 100 people in the next month, 10 of those people are moving this year. However, out of those 100 people, only 1 or 2, maybe 3 know they're moving right now that you just met. The other 7 don't know they're moving this year until about 3 or 4 months from now or later. The other thing on that is out of those 100 people, there's 10 more moving next year and 10 more. Remember, NAR says the average person moves every 5 to 7 years. I'm just saying 10 because it's slowed down a little bit and it's easier math. But there's somewhere between 10 to 20 people moving every single year for every 100 people you meet. Yet in this business, we are taught to go find the next 1, 2, or 3 and forget about the other 97. I stay in touch with the other 97 so that I don't have to work harder finding 1, 2, or 3 a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So I put them all on an automated follow-up.
Well said. Well said. And it does make your life easier because you're not chasing business that way. Chasing business isn't fun. I don't think it's fun. So let's wrap this up, Brad. If you were going to summarize database automation in one word, one sentence, one thought, what would you say?
Get uncomfortable now.
I like that. That's how all growth comes from that. Get uncomfortable now and do the work. Do the work. The
hardest part is documenting what you're doing. You don't have to do any work after that when you do it right.
Awesome. So listen, Brad, if people want to get a hold of you, your website's kornteam.com, Korn team. God, I could make so many jokes about that. I guess.
I know. It's made me some money though as I grew older.
Kornteam.com is his Twitter handle is @kornteam. Now you do coaching too. So if people want to hire you to help them with setting up their database, would you do that?
I would.
Awesome. Brad, thanks so much. I don't know how somebody can turn database automation into a moving story, but boy, did you ever. That wasn't what I was expecting. And that's obviously one of the reasons why your session was rated so high this last year, is because you were able to personalize something that is not very personal.
You know what? These systems made it possible for me to be in Seattle.
Awesome. Brad, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on, Patrick.